All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get this thing kicked off. So thank you for joining us for the fifth and final component or session of our spring cleaning series. This is the Mr. Clean Your Marketing Activities component. This is going to be presented by Kyle McCormick. He's a current champion, and we're very excited to have him join us today. So Kyle, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Yep, sounds good. Cool. Thank you, Andy, for the introduction, and thanks for having me for the Chicago Mug. This is the first Marketo user group that I've done in probably a year and a half, so I'm excited to be back. Unfortunately, it's virtual, so I can't actually be there in the room with you guys, but hopefully you guys will find useful for everything that you do in Marketo. So I'll go ahead and get started. A little bit of an introduction for myself. As Andy said, my name is Kyle McCormick. I'm a two-time Marketo champion. So I'm champion from this year and last year. I'm currently a senior marketing systems manager at Palo Alto Networks here in the Bay Area. I've been at Palo Alto Networks for just about 2 years, coming up next week. And before that, I was at Logarithm, which is another cybersecurity company in Boulder, Colorado. And I was there for about 4 years. So one thing that's really unique about my experience is I've been working at both an enterprise at Palo Alto Networks and a startup at Logarithm. So when I joined Logarithm, we were about 200 employees, 150 to 200. By the time I left, we were about 700. And then I jumped over to Palo Alto Networks. When I joined here about 2 years ago, we were around 4,000, 5,000 employees, and we're currently hovering around 9,000. So one thing that's been really unique is having that experience going from a startup to an enterprise and seeing all of the complexities between the two different types of systems, but also the similarities between the two. And then Palo Alto Networks, we were proud to win the 2019 Marketo Revy Award Marketing Team of the Year last year. And then we were also a finalist for the Experience Maker Awards this year. Cool. So today, I really broke this presentation down into two different sections. The first one is building for performance, and then everyday hacks. So one of the benefits, like I said, working from both a startup and an enterprise is I feel like I've seen kind of the both ends of the Marketo spectrum, as well as some of the issues that people run into. And a lot of the issues are actually the same. So a lot of things that I'm running into at Palo Alto Networks were exactly the same that I ran into at Logarithm, just at a larger scale. So in that 6 years of experience working Marketo, taking down some notes on some helpful things that I do every day. I know some of our other Marketo admins do as well to help, have our system running at peak performance, making sure it's running as smoothly as possible. All right, so building for performance. I have broken it down into these 6 different sections. A lot of these, some of them are very basic. Naming convention, pretty basic, but also very important, especially if you want to grow your instance, having a solid naming convention from the start. Maybe you don't have one right now, but starting one now is going to be very helpful in the future when you're trying to search for things, trying to find things, and just making sure that you can get all the data that you need out of Marketo. Power of request campaign. So I'll go through how to use a campaign's requested feature, one of the lesser known features of Marketo that's actually very powerful. How to limit redundant triggers. So it actually ties into request campaigns pretty seamlessly. So I'll walk through that. How to set up channel statuses and tags, tokens, and then a nice little zip code lookup that can help you reduce fields on your form and also get 2 different data points from form fill-outs. All right, so designing a naming convention. So why do you need a naming convention? Having a naming convention both for programs and assets make it extremely easy for you to find things in Marketo. So if you just, it's a free-for-all, you type in, sure, this is the Gartner Magic Quadrant. There's 5 different ways of saying it. You could do like Gartner MQ, you could say Gartner Magic Quadrant, you could do Gartner Magic Q. There's whole different ways of doing it. And then who knows about if it's a 2019 asset, if it's a 2020. So if you have a naming convention, it makes it way more consistent, so much easier to search. And also when you do outside reporting, if you know that the naming convention is in a specific order every single time, if you need to export all of your program names, you can do text to columns in Excel. You can find specific data from that naming convention and that program name and use that in VLOOKUPs, comparisons with Salesforce, a lot of other tools if you don't have a BI tool in-house. So just some ideas for naming convention when you design it. Palo possibly do a separate one for operational programs. So we have one set up for our assets, as well in marketing activities, as well in Design Studio, but our operational programs are set up a little bit differently. We have that set up because that's more internal use. We only use it for our Marketo admin, so it's more internal for us, and we don't have that public facing with the rest of the marketing organization. Like I said, naming convention for both emails and landing pages. So instead of just saying email 1, email 2, yes, it is still tied to that Marketo program, but if you have a specific naming convention for the emails, it makes it significantly easier to report on. And then you can also do exports into Excel, and you know exactly what email 1 is. And then create a Google Doc naming convention creator. So I'll actually, on the next slide, show you a glimpse of what ours looks like. I edited it obviously for the Marketo mug, but it's a very similar representation of what we have at Palo Alto Networks to make sure every program that we create within Marketo has a very specific naming convention and is the same every single time. And then finally, some questions to ask before you're creating your naming convention. So what are you really going to be searching for? Are you going to be searching for the asset type? So if it's an online event, in-person event, asset, put that in the naming convention, what region that asset's for. So maybe it's a EMEA event, so you want to have the region within that naming convention. Salesforce data, SFDC campaign ID, very critical. So at Logarithm, we started out and we started using the Salesforce campaign name in the naming convention. But the problem with that is names can change, but the IDs don't. So if you update a campaign name from, campaign A to campaign B, now you have a mismatch between what's in Marketo and what's in Salesforce. But if you just copy the campaign ID in the program name, that makes it very easy to find it, and it never changes unless you create a new campaign. You might want to put a date in the naming convention. So if it's an event, you might want to put the event date of when that's occurring. Or if it's a brand new asset, you might want to put, either the date it was created or the quarter is created, the year, just so you can have that when you're quickly looking at the Marketo programs, you can see exactly what you want to find. And finally, a unique ID. So if you're using Splash, On24, Zoom, we do put this in our naming convention as well. Just because if you're looking at a Splash event ID, you have the ID in Splash, you want to search in Marketo, there's really no easy way to combine the two. So it's the same thing with Salesforce. We always do the ID, never changes, easy to search. All right, so here's an example of a Marketo naming convention that we use. Like I said, this is very similar to the one that we have. It's a little different for the Marketo user group. But we have row 3 is our input field. So these are all data validation questions where you can choose, your region, the channel type, the language, the date of the asset or the date of the event. Column G, the X's are going to be the Salesforce campaign ID. So you can put the ID directly in here. We do priority. So every asset within Marketo has a priority between 1 through 4. So we can see, P1 is sometimes our most important assets. P2 is going to be our live events. Go-to-market. So Palo Alto Networks, we are split up into multiple go-to-markets. So we have multiple teams across the globe. So this could be a product line. It could be even a region if that's something you want to do. And the name is just the free text name of the asset or the event. And once this finishes in row 7, you can see that is the actual name of the program that we're going to get created. So you can just copy that name directly from the Google Doc and put it into Marketo for the new program. If you want to get fancy, you can also set up an API that will automatically create a Marketo program. But if you're more basic, just wanting to get started with a naming convention, this is a great way to make sure it's always consistent across every Marketo campaign. And then these are just the data validation questions on the back end to make sure you only select what we want you to. All right, so power of request campaign. So I actually did a session about this at the Adobe Summit this year, the virtual event. So both myself and Jake Schlan, who is our marketing systems technology manager here at Palo Alto Networks, we both did a presentation on the power of request campaign. So if this is something that you want more information on, The sessions are still live on Adobe Summit, and I also have a link at the end of this presentation to them. But just as a quick overview, what does it? It allows you to put people into a specific campaign with a flow step. It's kind of like a chain and link, right? So you have to do a request campaign in the flow step of campaign A. And then in the trigger campaign where you want the lead to go, you have to do a campaign as requested trigger in that smart list. So essentially, a good example is I want my lead to go through a data normalization campaign. I can then request that my lead goes through that campaign, and then it connects the two. So you don't have to do everything in one smart list. If you have something that is high volume, every lead has to go through, doing a request campaign is a great way to get those leads into that specific program. I also have some examples coming up as well. So use cases, like I said, data processing, person is created, data standardization. So I know Warren in the last chat went through, making sure your country is normalized, your state's normalized. It's a great way to get people into those normalization campaigns to make sure your data is really consistent when it comes into Marketo and when it's syncing over to Salesforce. And finally, the last one here is second last one is webhook calls. So in Marketo, if you're in lead database, you can't physically request a webhook for a lead. So you can't right click, request webhook. It's just not possible in Marketo. But what you can do is you can right click, request campaign. So if you have a campaign as requested, smart campaign set up for that webhook, you can manually request that campaign within lead database. So it's kind of a quick workaround to manually calling webhooks when you need one to be called. And then tying into the request campaign is just limiting redundant triggers. So an example here that you can see in that screenshot is our processing lead is created trigger. So we want to make sure that our system is being optimized and running as efficient as possible. We have thousands of leads that get created every week. So if we have the person's created trigger in 15 different places, when we create those 1,000 leads on Monday, that 1,000 leads, they're going to get triggered in all 15 of those person's created triggers. So what we've actually done is we only have 2 instances in marketing activities where a person is created. And it's this lead is created, and then below it is the lead is created from list acquisition. So we have it split up by 2. We have lead is created by form fill, by integration, by Salesforce. All of that goes down trigger A. And then anything that's created from a list upload, we push them down the second processing flow. And that's just to make sure that our systems are running as quickly as possible so we don't have those 15 person's created triggers running at the same time and slowing down our system. Another thing is the data value changes, right? If you're listening to email address changing in 15 different places, that can be slowing your system down, maybe, first name. We actually ran into that a couple of times. I've seen a couple of other companies run into it where, Salesforce wants to normalize the country, right? So if you're passing country as United States all lowercase, and then you sync that over to Salesforce, if the pick list value for that is uppercase U and uppercase S for United States, when that syncs back to Marketo, that's a data value change. So if you have 15 triggers looking for country changing, now all of those are also going to get triggered. So just things like that, making sure you're trying to use it as little as possible in like 1 or 2 places, but then requesting the campaign from there to make sure it's more efficient. And lead assignment and data enrichment, same example where, if every lead has to go through enrichment, every lead has to go through assignment, just have one enrichment program, one assignment program, and you can always request those campaigns directly from your processing campaigns. All right, so channel statuses and tags. Wanted just to quickly run through how we're using this. Makes it really easy to pull manual reports. So a lot of things that we do, we use RCE a lot in Marketo. We also export data out of Marketo all the time. And a lot of times, spending time in Excel trying to figure out, all right, this is this campaign, this is this program, how do we match those together? So we've worked really hard to make sure that Marketo and Salesforce are very, very similar between each other. And one thing that we do is all of our channel types in Marketo match up with channel types in Salesforce. And that way, when we're pulling reports in both systems, we can just do Marketo type equals digital asset, and then Salesforce type equals digital asset. And then we also have a separate channel for operational campaigns. So that way we can separate all of our operational activities out from the marketing activities. And then just a quick example of what those look like. So for channel statuses, one thing that I have found very helpful, besides making them the same as Salesforce, so attended, registered, no-show, making sure those are the same in Salesforce and Marketo, is actually create a reset status. And I actually recently just started doing this because with some of our integrations like, On24 or Zoom or Splash, we don't want to remove people from a program because that does affect, downstream integrations. But maybe we want to reset a status. So if by accident, a trigger wasn't turned on, that triggers when a lead is changed to attended. We want to turn it on, and instead of doing a batch campaign, we actually just reset the status. So it's the exact same progression status as attended. We set it to reset and then change it back to attended. So that way we're not removing people from the program. They're staying in there. We're just simply resetting the status and having them trigger down the Marketo actions again. So that one's really helpful. Once you have a lot of volume, if you need to reset like hundreds of thousands of them, I don't recommend doing that because it does take a while. But if there's like 15 or 20 leads that accidentally got through and you need to re-trigger them, this is a good way of doing that again. And then with tags, anything that you want to report on, this is kind of similar to the naming convention, but just if you have an integration, so we have Splash, maybe we have in-person events, On24, Zoom, and Zoom webinars, we do tag everything unique. So when we're pulling reports from RCE, we can actually pull based on the tag. So it just makes it cleaner. You're not pulling as many people through every single time. All right, tokens. So tokens, and again, another link at the end of this presentation, but I presented at Marketing Nation Live on tokens. I don't know how I filled an entire hour of tokens, but I did somehow. So this is a quick one slide of tokens, of some tokens that I think are less commonly used that could be used more. So one thing, copyright year and company name. Copyright is everywhere. It's always at the end of your landing pages. It's always at the end of emails. A lot of times people use snippets for that, which is great, but you might not use snippets in every single place that copyright year and company name is used. So at the end of 2020, you're going to have to go in and change everything to 2021. But if you have this token at the highest level folder in Marketo, you can just change it in one spot, and then that will trickle down to every landing page or email that is in marketing assets that's being used there. So that's very useful. Addresses is also helpful. Again, snippets are great for addresses. You might not be using it everywhere. So again, you can have a token, update it if your headquarters change, if you move offices, and then logos. So logos are really helpful, especially when you go through a rebrand. So Palo Alto Networks actually just rebranded a couple months ago, and we had over 200 live assets, I believe, and going through and updating all of those landing pages, all of those emails, we could do it, but it wasn't going to be something that we could flip on overnight. So we identified our top 50 landing pages that we needed to switch over, our 50 emails, and then of course asset emails, we use snippets, so it was only one spot, which was nice. But we wanted to do a quick change as well when we launched our new brand. So we had our logo as a token, and then we just went in, switched out the token, and then that updated everywhere that we weren't able to get to until we could update all of those landing pages and emails. Program tokens, again, event location, time, address. We do all of this for our landing pages, so everything is tokenized. And then asset links and UTMs. I have it in here to keep separate. So this is kind of the biggest thing that I've learned is UTMs do kind of change. So if you want to create a separate UTM, it's easier to actually separate the two tokens so you can update just the link or just the UTM. And the UTMs you can also keep at the inherent level. So the higher level tokens where if you're doing nurture email and all the UTMs are the same, it can just automatically filter down into the programs below it. And my personal favorite is the line break token. So do not use this in any emails or landing pages, but this is another great hack by Stanford where he essentially created a line break within Marketo. So if you're appending notes like company notes or personal notes, someone comes by the booth and they give you, I'm interested in this product. Next 5 months, contact me here. You don't want the notes to be all jumbled up when it gets over to Salesforce. So the line break token allows you to insert a line break before it syncs over to Salesforce. So now your notes are cleanly separated line by line, and not just all jumbled text, which is great. And sales reps and sales teams love that. And then finally, the last hack is with Marketo Sky. So Marketo Sky is not used very much, but one of the benefits that I find using it is the ability to import tokens. So you can import tokens from another program or another folder. So if you create a program from scratch and you're like, oh no, I forgot to include my tokens, you can use Marketo Sky to import those tokens from another program or another folder. So that's actually really beneficial. So that's helpful. And it will transfer over to Marketo Classic. So you can go to Sky, import the tokens, and then they will be back in Classic when you switch over to that view. And finally, zip code lookup. So one of the things that we started doing is assigning leads to BDRs based on geo and based on zip code. So when we originally did that, we're like, okay, great. Now we got to add another field to our form. We already have, 7 different fields depending on where you're at, what your job level is. And now we're going to add another one. So what we started to do is we did this zip code lookup where we actually got rid of states. So for United States, Canada, and Australia, we don't ask for state anymore because you can uniquely map a zip code to a state. There are, I believe, 7 zip codes in the US that do cross state borders, but they're very small towns and there's not a lot of businesses in those towns. So we did choose whichever one had, or like Google Maps looked at the outline and we're like, all right, this state has a little bit more coverage than the other states, so we're going to select that one. And then what we do in Marketo is any new lead that gets created, if it has a zip code and country is the United States, we push them through the Smart campaign that will assign a state based on that unique zip code. So this is great because you don't have to add that extra field into your forms, but by adding zip code, you now get two data points. You get you get state and zip code. All right, so before I move on to everyday hacks, does anybody have any questions on that first section or any other ideas that people can use when going through tokens or zip code, form fills, anything like that?
Hi, Kyle. I have a quick question. Could you please go over the reset status again?
Yeah.
Really
Yep. So the example that we use it for a lot is events. So the 3 statuses that we use are registered, attended, and then no-show.
Yeah.
And what we do is we actually have a registered and a register reset, attended reset, and then no-show reset. So everything we do is based on smart campaigns. We don't use the native Marketo to Salesforce sync in terms of the program sync. So we do it based on smart campaigns. And this really helps if that smart campaign just wasn't activated, right? So the smart campaigns we're listening to status is changed to no-show. And if that smart campaign wasn't activated, before what we used to do is we actually removed them from the program and then added them back in as a no-show. But now with the reset, we actually keep them in the program, make sure the acquisition program stays the same. It doesn't change any of the metrics. We just change it to that no-show reset, let it, all the leads get updated in that program, and then we change it back to no-show. So then it triggers that no-show trigger further on.
And this is specifically for online events, right?
So we do it for online and in person. And we've also done it a few times with digital assets. So if you go and download a white paper, we do have it in there as well. We don't use it as much because that's a lot higher volume and we don't want to hurt the system by doing that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's definitely nice because, if it's just like 4 or 5 members, it's the process of fixing a status is a little difficult because you're going to have to add them to a static list, remove them from the program, wait for them to be removed, go back in the static list, add them back to the program, and make sure they're in the right spot. It just removes a couple extra steps from that process.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a nice hack. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. All right, I will continue into this new section, which is a little more fun because I added one new slide in the last hour that I think a lot of you guys are gonna like. Marketo support might not like me for adding this, but it's gonna be fun. So again, 5 or 6 different sections in everyday hacks. So campaign queue, Salesforce sync status, which is the one I just added. I should have put that one first, but I think campaign queue is a lot more helpful. System settings, weekly, monthly, quarterly checks that we do just to make sure things are looking good, systems running as expected, list naming, a little gotcha for list names, and then Gmail testing. All right, so campaign queue. So the campaign queue is the quickest way in Marketo to check if you have a backlog in your instance. So if you're testing a web form fill out and you're like, why haven't I gotten my asset email? It's been 20 minutes. The campaign queue is actually one of the more beneficial places to check because it will show you, and I have a screenshot of that as well, of everything that's happening in your system. So maybe you have a big email send that's affecting 20,000 people, and the results of that is now all of your processing has slowed down. You can go in and check that in Marketo, and then if you see something that keeps triggering every single time, it could be a repeat offender. So if it's a repeat offender, like, all right, this trigger, something has to happen. It's running every day. Every time I check, there's always 50 leads or 500 leads or 5,000 leads in the queue. That's a good indicator that there's a bottleneck and you need to either adjust how that smart campaign is running. Maybe there's too many wait steps. Maybe there's too many flow steps. But that's very beneficial to make sure that your system is running efficiently. So to get to the campaign queue, when you're in Marketo, if you just click on marketing activities, and then at the top, there's a campaign queue. So this is going to be all of the running campaigns that are currently in the system. So the one up top is a batch campaign, and then everything below that is going to be a smart campaign. I'll let that run through one more time because that was kind of quick. So this was taken this morning. So these are our active smart campaigns that we currently have running when I took the screenshot. All right, Salesforce sync status. So this was something that was posted in the MOPS professional Slack channel this morning, also on LinkedIn. So this is a new-ish feature. It's kind of a beta. Support told me it's not a beta. It's just kind of a hidden feature that you can request support to unhide for you. But essentially what it is when you go to admin and select Salesforce, then go to sync status, you can then see all of the objects that are currently syncing between Marketo and Salesforce, how many have been updated, how many are brand new, the number of deleted records, and then anything that was skipped or failed. So this is something that I just found out today that we've been asking for a while. So this is very beneficial to see, why do I have so many objects syncing to Salesforce? You can specifically see, okay, it's a person object, it's a campaign member. So this gives you a great breakdown on what's syncing and what's going on in your system. And it's also very quick to enable. So I think I found out about this at noon my time. I submitted a support ticket right away. I just included the screenshot, and then I said in the admin Salesforce section, please add sync status, and it was added within 20 minutes. So definitely highly recommend adding this just so you can see what's going on in your system and the sync between Marketo and Salesforce. All right, so system settings, I have a couple different slides on this one. Marketo notification alerts, highly recommend subscribing to these in the notifications section of Marketo. I think, yep, I do have it here. So in the top bar, there's a tab for notifications. I highly recommend subscribing to as many of these as you want. It's a great way to see Salesforce sync errors. So you can see, oh, the pick list might have changed. So now country is, it's looking for the 2-digit code instead of the spelled out country. maybe it's not normalized, or maybe the field that you're trying to pass isn't in the pick list. So we're getting these errors every day where we see, oh, okay, this lead came in with United States of America instead of United States. And our normalization campaign didn't catch it because America was spelled some different way than what we had in our system. So this just helps us see what's going on in the system, make real-time changes. The alerts get sent out at 11 p.m. Pacific every day. So every morning I come into work and I have 4 or 5 different alerts, look at those, make any changes necessary, and then resync those leads. The idea behind it, like for pick list for country, is you can set up a data normalization campaign in Marketo that will eventually block that from happening again. Cool. All right, system settings, so smart campaign limits. This one is beneficial because of something I actually did when I was an intern at my last company. So when I took over the team, I accidentally blacklisted our entire database. And then there was a smart campaign set up that ran that night that was supposed to delete anybody that was blacklisted. So luckily, I was like, why is our database going down slowly? And then found out what was happening. So after that happened, we actually implemented this smart campaign limit where in admin, let me start that. If it goes, there we go. In admin, you can actually put a limit of how many records can go through a smart campaign in a given time. So we have a limit currently of 640,000. So we do about, anywhere between 10 and 20% of your database is what I would recommend putting on here. So if you do have more than, that number, it's going to fail. And then you can actually get around it within the specific smart campaign that you're triggering. So that's what the screen is showing right now. So in the schedule tab, when it loads, you can click the edit button and then scroll down, and you can actually update the number of people that the limit exceeds for that smart campaign only. So if you are doing a mass update to your entire database, maybe you need to populate a new field, you can just edit that specific smart campaign settings so you can affect the entire database, but you can still keep the limit for everything else. Again, very beneficial, just so you don't accidentally almost delete an entire database like I did, because who knows what would have happened, and don't know. Would have been a fun morning, I guess. But this is very nice, especially if you have newer people in Marketo, or you accidentally do an or instead of an and, so you can do like lead is created or something. I've done that multiple times, and this has caught me. It's like, oh wait, I'm not really trying to affect 3 million people. It's supposed to be like 3,000 people. So that's very beneficial to have in your system. Cool. And then some of the checks that we do, weekly, monthly, quarterly. So as a cybersecurity company, one of the things that is ingrained in our head is, data security, platform security, and making sure, no bad actors can get into Marketo. So every week I look at our login history in Marketo admin just to make sure, like, this user has had, the wrong password entered 15 times. That might be suspicious. So we do have single sign-on, thankfully. But even with single sign-on, we do get people, wrong passwords or people trying to get in. So that is very beneficial to making sure, people aren't trying to log into your instance. You can see like when they're logging in, the IP address. It makes it easier just to make sure nothing is going on in your system. Lead performance report, just to see how many leads are coming in, going out. If we have a huge drop in leads, maybe something happened, maybe a source is broken, maybe integration is broken. So we look at that every week, making sure that looks good, sometimes daily even, just to see everything is working as expected. Some monthly data review. So it's a little harder with a bigger database if you don't have a BI tool, but if you do have a smaller database, you can always export all the records that came in the last month, and then do Excel formulas, pivot tables to see, all right, out of the 2,000 people that came in this month, why do only 10% of them have a country? So that monthly data review just helps see where the gap is in your data. Maybe that is a great use case to do a data enrichment program, go out to a vendor, get some data for that missing data, or maybe you have great data, and this is a use case of why you don't need a data enrichment program. Email performance and landing page performance, great way to find bots. So if someone is hitting your API and your landing page performance report just went through the roof, you have like 100,000 views, but only 2 conversions. Someone is obviously hitting that landing page. Maybe you should, it's time to change the URL or make a redirect, go somewhere different, just so you're not getting hit on those landing pages. And then quarterly, landing page audit and email audit, just making sure people are still looking at the landing pages that you have running, and then email is making sure you're still using them, you're still sending them. If not, it's time to deactivate them. Cool. And then tying back to that data review. So these are some of the things that we look for every month. So email address check. So if email doesn't contain the @ sign or the $. So if it's missing the @ sign, it's a little harder to get into Marketo. A lot of times it's just going to be through an API call where there's no real validation that an email address has to have an @ sign. So if someone's hitting you through the API and injecting leads into Marketo, that's a good way to see, if they're missing an @ sign, they're obviously invalid. If it's missing a period, one thing I just found out a couple of weeks ago actually is even though Marketo forms do have email validation, it's only looking for the @ sign. It's not looking for a period. So if I do kmccormick@Palatin-Networks, it thinks it's a valid email because even though it's missing the .com, they'll still let you submit that form. So we do have the email checks to make sure every email address comes into our system with a dot, because every email address does have a dot. So it's either .com, .net, .io, .ai. Everything should have a dot. And then incorrect pick list values, so state, country, job role, job function, just making sure if you have pick lists for those in Salesforce that you're listening for specific data for those pick lists. And then the suspected bots. So if you have 100,000 views on a page, or maybe someone filled out 50 forms in 10 minutes, that's a great indication that a bot may have hit your site and just kept submitting forms, trying to slow down your system. All right, list naming. So this is another thing that I actually found out 2 weeks ago. Very frustrating. I've been using Marketo for 6 years, and then when I found this out, I was like, wow, wonder how many times that this has actually affected me. So list naming. So what happens when you create a static list named Chicago Mug invite list and yesterday's date, 2020-06-30? You upload 10 brand new people into that list, so they're created by that list. And then today you change the date to have 07-01. So people are still on the list. They were uploaded into the list when it said 2020-06-30, and then now the name has rechanged. So someone asked you to pull a report of all the leads that were created from this list. So what I've done in the past is like, oh, great, I'm going to pull a report. Person is created. List name is Chicago Mug invite list 2020-07-01, right? Because now this is 6 months later. I forgot that the name was actually 06-30. I look in Marketo, the name is 2020-07-01. Well, when you pull that report, no one's going to show up because, gotcha, Marketo stamps the name at creation. So in Marketo, 0 people will show up in that report because no one has that, or there might be, but the 10 that you're looking for, they don't have that name. They actually have the list name stamped as 2020-06-30. So that's just a little hint or a little reminder that when you do change the name of lists in Marketo, if people were created from that list, the original list name stays the same. So what we do is in the list, we have a log in there. So anytime a list name is changed, we put the old name in the list as well as the new name. Just so when this happens, now we can go back and like, oh, the name was actually 2020-06-30. Now it's 2020-07-1. I need to include both of those list names in my person who's created list name is both of those. That was a fun little catch that we caught a couple weeks ago. All right, and then my last one is Gmail testing. So we actually just found this out when our company switched over from Outlook to Gmail. And so my email address is kmccormick@palatin-networks.com. And with Gmail, dots and plus signs don't actually matter. So what that means is if you have a Gmail account, maybe it might not be your corporate account, but if you have a personal email address, you can use it for that one as well. You can always do K McCormick plus, and whatever's after that plus doesn't matter. The email will still go to kmccormick@palatinetworks.com. So what this is really beneficial for is because in Marketo thinks this is brand new record. It's a brand new person, brand new email address. It's going to go through all of the normal processing. You have a new Munchkin code, you have a new cookie, but in Gmail, it's exactly the same. So now you're still going to get the email sent to you. You're still going to get the asset email, the nurture email. But in Marketo, it's going to be a very different record. So you can do this, with Marketo MUG. You could do like test email 1, test nurture 1, anything like that. You can also do, this third example here is EMEA MAL. So if I want to track a lead through the funnel and make sure that the EMEA MAL lead is getting all the MAL content in the engagement engine, you can do it this way. I don't have a screenshot of what it looks like in Gmail, but in Gmail, it'll say like from as like Palatin Networks, but then the 2, it will show the K McCormick plus EMEA MAL as a 2 email address. So then you can also go back and track it like, okay, great. I got this email, this is exactly what I wanted, or maybe something was wrong, and now you can go back and look at that unique record in Marketo. And the same thing with the dots. So dots don't matter. So I could do k.m.c.c, and it'll still go to my email address. So that's another cool little test hack that you can do to always create a new record in Marketo, but have it always go to the same inbox in Gmail. Cool. So that's all I had. I included some helpful links. I assume that this presentation will get sent out. So I have the 2020 Adobe Summit presentation on campaign as requested, the 2019 Marketing Nation Live presentation on tokens that somehow spent an hour about talking about tokens. A couple of links, so the line break token, the SFDC sync status beta, that's not really beta, but it's that new feature that you can add in to see the status sync. And I also have the invite to the MOPS Pro Slack channel, which is very helpful. That's where I actually found the sync status beta in. It was also on LinkedIn, but a lot of times I'll go to that MOPS Pro Slack channel just to hit ideas off of other people or find some cool stuff that people are doing in the MOPS world. And finally, a couple upcoming events. So the Adobe Experience Makers Live event is coming up in July. So that one is put on by Adobe, and I believe it's free. And then the MopsCon Summit is September 8th. So I'll be speaking at that one as well. And it's going to be more of a roundtable session. That one, there is a fee, but you can use the promo code Kyle and get $50 off the registration. So hope to see you guys there. And then I have about 12 minutes before I have to jump to a meeting. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. This has been great. We do have one question, one comment, and everyone feel free to throw out more questions or type them in, whatever works for you. So there was a question before when you were going through tokens about how you could use tokens for URL for UTMs since text tokens don't work.
So we use, I believe we do use text tokens in the HTML. We don't use rich text, but we use plain text. Okay,
including the UTMs?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So essentially the first text token is going to be like http start.palatinetworks.com/Gartner and then another slash, and then the second token is always the my.utm, where we do question mark UTM medium equals email, right. UTM campaign equals nurture. Yeah, so we do have those two split up.
Okay. And then Frank, hey Frank from ARM, it's Andy. It's good to hear you or see you on here. He said he once worked for a company where there was an account that was hacked and the database was deleted. Apparently, there is a trash type hidden feature that they were able to access to restore, which I did not know Marketo had that. So
that's nice. That's very
nice. Late
nice.
and a dollar short, maybe on your instance, but it's good. It's good to know.
I was freaking out when that happened. I was like, oh my God, I just deleted our entire database and we're going to lose everything. Everything's gone.
Yeah. That
was fun.
No fun. Yeah, I've had stuff that wasn't supposed to delete that deleted before. Never good. One other thing, I just went through this with a client, so that's why it's kind of top of mind, but recently had a scenario where they were not in a scenario where they would have had RCE, and they were looking to do some data synthesis and kind of policing for monthly and quarterly reporting. And I just stumbled across this great functionality. There's a free BI tool, and I'll get the name for it. But you can automate a pull from SFDC into a Google Sheet, and then from there, it pulls straight into the BI tool on a regulated update schedule.
That's cool. That's very cool. Yeah, I know
So no more
a lot of
exporting
customers,
data if everything's in SFDC that you need.
yeah, and I know a lot of customers do also have very large Microsoft Office instances, and a lot of times their IT groups also have a BI tool that they just don't tell marketing that they have. So that's also a good question to go ask your IT team if they do have a free BI tool that they're paying for that's sometimes just bundled into the Microsoft products.
Yeah, sometimes one that no one's even using or they don't think about for sure.
Yep. Something is better than nothing too. So it might not be the most functional tool, but at least you can pull data out.
Yeah, exactly. And does anyone else have any questions they want to throw in Slack or in the chat, or rather, feel free to take yourself off mute, holler out, whatever you've got, Cal, for a couple more minutes, and then we're done. We'll wrap up. But